All right, today is the day, cup construction. When we are ready to build this cup, we'll start with our rectangular slab from last time. So we know we'll need that. This slab should be even in thickness across if you roll it correctly. And when you cut that rectangle, if you had a little extra length on the end, it's not a big deal. Just make sure your height is at 5 inches like we've discussed. If you have a base already cut, that's great. If you don't, remember we can cut it and trim it in the moment, and you could even roll one if you don't have one after you've already started constructing our piece here. You'll also need a PVC pipe. They can be found on the clay cart over in the corner. This pipe is going to be the form that we are wrapping around, essentially using it like a mold. So for starters, I will take my PVC pipe and a magazine page. This magazine will need to be overhanging the end by, I don't know, about 2 inches. And then I will tightly wrap this to it. The overhang is to give you some to tuck. So I've wrapped it tight, like you can see here, and the overhang allows me to stuff in on the end. Voila, done there. So now this protects it from sticking to the pipe. So I have this ready. My next move is to take my slab and line up the end of the slab with the end of the pipe, and I will bring the walls up and roll it on. When you roll it around, you're probably gonna end up a tad short. If you are a tad short, like in this one I've got a small gap, I can lay it back out, use the other end of my PVC pipe to roll it just like we did with our slab roller. I would just roll gently to extend that just a little bit. If your paper that you added on tears or comes off, it's not a problem. Just come see me, I'll give you another one. So I've extended my slab, I've set it back up, I'm rolling it on again. Now I've got plenty of length. I need a light overlap. Here's my first move. Once I'm here, I will take one side and start pinching the end down to a nice point. That'll extend it a little bit, but that should remove the bump where we have our overlap by thinning this end. Once I've pinched this side all the way down, I'm gonna lay it open and then start pinching this side as well. So you're just thinning that one spot. Pinch it down. Okay, now, it might fan out a touch, but that's okay. We'll use that as extra clay. Anytime you connect two pieces, you need to first start by scoring. So score marks, doesn't matter the angle or the positioning of them as long as they are in the two parts of clay that touch. You can use a needle tool like this to do your score marks in. Or we have some nice scrapers here with spiky edges that you can come and drag those across your clay to get the same scoring effect. Either way works for me. Just like Velcro, we need to score the two sides that touch. So I can come in and score this opposite side over here to make sure both sides are ready. Once I'm in this position, I need to get slip. Slip is watered down clay. I've got it in little jars for you here. I would make sure you keep that away from the edge of your table and more to the center so it doesn't get knocked over. But with this slip, you can just rub a little bit of that into your seam. You can use your hand if it doesn't bother you, or you can get a small brush to apply that slip. It is just watered down clay, and it's gonna help make this connection even stronger. That is slip. After you've scored and you've slipped, now I need to bring my edges together, so I'll swing this up, and now I want to make this connection strong. Just by pushing it, it will stick, but moisture is the only thing holding it right now. So what I need to do is press. I'm going to roll it a little bit so hopefully you can see. See how that slip is pushing out of these score marks as I press? So I've got to score it, slip it, press it, and then once I've pressed all the way down, make sure I'm not pushing too hard. I don't want to collapse that wall of the cup, but I really want to make sure that that seam comes together well. I've scored, I've slipped, I've pressed. Now it's time to smooth or smudge. It's my final step. So this seam has to go away. You can do this with your hands just fine. The slip should provide some moisture to help you scrub this seam away. That works. Or if you aren't having luck smoothing it out with your hands to get rid of that line, you can use any of our smoothing tools. I recommend putting your thumb on one side, fingers on the other, so you can curve this piece and use it to scrape the curve of your cup. So an example, when I'm doing this, I hit it with a little bit of spray just so it'll scrape smoother. And now I can use this tool to rub these edges and seams down. I will take some of that buildup off. And if I have any little divots or weak spots, I can fill that in, but I don't, so I'm just gonna sit it over here with my extra clay. I'll scrape around my cup. All right, so my seam is gone. Now let's deal with the edges. So if my edges are a little ugly, I'll take another scraper, these metal scrapers, and I can use this thin, flat edge, the opposite side of what I scored with, and just roll it on that overhanging part, and it'll kind of cut it clean and just tear that off, or if you want to come and kind of scrape it off, you can. So that should clean that part up. You do have the option, without applying a lot of pressure, to roll this out on your table. I just like to roll it all the way around, make sure everything's out of the way, and that will give a nice treatment to those walls. Take care and make sure it doesn't fall off, but this still needs to line up here on the end because we're ready to add our base on. So the base should line up pretty well. If it doesn't, then we can trim it to fit. So if your base doesn't fit, too small, I would go back to your slats and I would go back to your rolling pin to expand this a touch in either direction so you know that it's ready. And if that doesn't do it and it's still too small, you might want to re-roll the whole thing, or just get rid of the slats and just be very careful to expand this ever so slightly. I just like to have a light overhang when I set this up. All right, ready to connect. I'll sit this on that base just to make sure it lines up. It does. If there's any extra, just want to show you this thin little edge here. If there's any extra, I like to come around and stab this needle tool and trim that extra so it's an almost perfect fit. I'm fine with a light overhang, but I don't want anything too crazy. Next thing, if I'm connecting these two edges, I need to score, slip, press, and smooth or smudge. So I can go all the way around, scoring the edge of this piece, or I can go back to using this same tool that we talked about before, putting score marks along the edges. Biggest thing is that I make those indents that will grab the other side of the clay that I'm trying to get to stick to. Base is done. Now I need to get the walls and the rim here. I would do the same thing, just kind of run this over it. Needle tool works just as fine. This is just a tad faster. Next step, I've scored. I need to slip. If I can get the lid off. To me, I'm fine with just covering one side with slip. You don't want to overdo it. You might just make a mess or overhydrate your piece, make it a little sloppy. We don't want to lose that stability just for the sake of connecting. All right, I've got both sides scored, I've slipped. I'm gonna bring this together. We've talked about it, score, slip, press. So I need to press this seam down all the way around. So I'm rotating and pushing this seam, rotating and pushing this seam. This seam will grab if I press it, and then my last step is going to be to smudge or smooth. I like to take my thumb from up high, which is down at the bottom of the cup, and drag it up towards the body here. Drag it down, drag it down. If this is hard to do, a little spray Won't hurt it. It'll kind of help this smoothing process, which the slip will do too. It's going to be a little bumpy and lumpy at first, but we will be able to make adjustments and roll it out. So I've gone all the way around. I can smooth better with my hands, but I can still see a little bit of that seam on some parts, so I need to do a better job of cleaning that up. Final thing is, if I want to clean that surface, I can roll a little bit on the table to kind of clean up that seam and get it flatter, and still keeping this on the pipe. I'm just kind of guiding that edge and rolling back and forth. This won't make it perfect, but it will improve the look of that edge. So we've got some small little dents, probably just from the imperfections on the paper. Then I'll sit my cup vertical and give it a light tap. So I just like to tap it lightly on the table to flatten that base. And it should give you a pretty clean corner. Some still little bumps and lumps and things that we could smooth out. Once I'm happy overall with my design, I could scrape these edges a little bit more, but I'll pull the pipe out, leaving just the paper inside. I collect the paper all together in the middle, and then I will twist and rotate my pipe, pulling the paper clean and free. So now I have my vessel formed. Be careful, while it is wet clay, it is easy to squish, easy to manipulate. The more you bend and move that, you're gonna start creating cracks and seams. So make sure that I would pick up with two hands, making sure not to change the shape. And then you have completed your cup.